We do have a responsibility as individual teachers to look at the tools we're bringing in, especially if we just want to try it one time to make sure that it is in compliance. But sometimes lack of time, you just figure, well, it's out there, it's good, everybody's using it, my friends are using it, so it must be okay. And then you find out, oh, well, I didn't know they were selling the information to third parties. Well, that's not good.
Whoops. Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting edition of the Undisrupted Podcast, live from FETC. Adam, we have a special guest joining us today.
Very special.
Very special. Something seems to be wrong with her hand, but other than that, she's with us today in spirit, mind, and body. This is Rachelle Dené Poth. Rachelle, say hi to our listeners out there.
Hello to everybody. Thanks for joining in. Thank you to Adam and Carl for the opportunity.
I'll tell you one thing, with her hand the way it is, she will not make it on my Knuckles page, my Only Hands.
That's right. Adam started,
Only Hands
have you heard of
with an
this
H?
Only Hands thing? Yeah, he
I'm a Knuckles model.
He invented it in his own.
Model.
Yeah. He's not only the president, he's a member. That's right.
Yes. Not so great looking Knuckles right now. If you with that, just do this, not that.
That is a different podcast. So tell us a little bit, Rachelle, tell us a little bit, catch us up on what you're doing, tell our listeners who you are, what you do for a living, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I do a lot of different things. I teach full-time, I'm a consultant full-time. I'm also an attorney. Clearly, I love to keep on going and never sleeping, but just happy to be at conferences, doing some presentations here at FETC, getting to see some friends, meeting some people in person for the first time. I think that covers it. I'm actually also one other thing I'm working on my doctorate because I found that I had a couple of extra hours in the day. So, and I wasn't working on a book, so I figured I might as well, could I take a walk, read, sleep, or go to school? I was like, yes, I go to school. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Just one more thing. How many books do you have?
I have 7. Same as you,
Tied.
Right? So I think there's a competition right now.
How many cats do you have?
I have 7.
So if you have another book, you're going to have another cat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna get another
Now,
cat.
are the cats named after the books or the books
That
named
would be
after
awesome.
the cats?
You know
How does that work?
That would have been something, but I've had the cats, one of my cats is actually 18 and a half right now, so I would have never thought 18 and a half years ago that I would have been writing any books. So that would, and if that were the case, one of my books' names would be Jinxie. So,
Actually, I could see that on the bookshelf there at the next ISTE conference.
it would make
Jinxie.
sense because the way I came up with the name was not from Meet the Parents that everybody thinks, like Jinxie cat, okay? Because it was a kitten that showed up outside. I can't remember talking about cats. Jamie Donnie would be like, it's so predictable. But my friend came over and she's like, what's that cat doing? And I said, she's just up to her hijinks. The phrasing hijinks. So I just kept saying hijinks. And Jinx. And then Jinx became Jinxie. And then the whole Meet the Parents thing kind of, but I think I had it first.
So I think about Jinx the cat. I want to say it was wasn't that an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon or something, like Jinx the cat or something? Or am I just making that up?
I just think of Snarf, but Snarf was was in that other show with Snarf would be a weird. Yeah, it was.
Maybe it's the title of the next book.
Gargamel, wasn't that a cat? That was Smurf.
No, that was Azrael.
Azrael. Yeah.
Snarf, was that
Snarf was in Thundercats.
Thundercats, yeah.
We need Alexa right now. Alexa,
right. Can we have ChatGPT announce it to write our next? Tell us what are your.
Write me a book about Snarf with a character named Jinxie and Gargamel.
You will be. I predict Rachelle will be the first person to write a book about using AI in schools because you're all up in that stuff. AI, AR, VR, any other initial I can think of. I look it up and there's Rachelle's face next to it. What are your thoughts on the craze? I mean, I feel like are we just at the very tipping point, infant stage, like when Google became Google type thing? You think?
That's what I think, and a lot of people have been asking me, and I had helped do research for an article for Forbes with Tom Vander Ark from Getting Smart, 2.5 years ago, actually almost 3 years ago now. It was on GPT-3, and he wrote most of it, but I was just trying to find other resources, and I remember reading what he had put into the draft, and I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what this technology is capable of. And then the last couple of months, I have been looking into AI continuously, and then ChatGPT, of course, and I sent an email to Tom, and I said, is anybody writing a blog about this? And actually Nate behind him was working on one, and he said, hey, I would love to have you collaborate. So together we put together that blog, and actually one paragraph in it was written by ChatGPT, so there's a disclaimer at the end of it, but a lot of people have been asking questions. I had people reach out, especially after New York banned it, and teachers in my school and other people in my PLN are asking about it too. And I said, but like, we've always had access to something to make work easier to find the answers.
Right.
Like, no matter what it was, whether you asked a person before we had the technology or when Google came around, calculators, photo math, all of those things.
The
like,
pencil, the chalkboard. I mean,
you could go back, and there's always been like a challenge when it comes to technology and then plagiarism and things. And for me as a language teacher, I mean, translators, that's a huge thing that I could tell. I always joke with the students, I'm like, if you hand me your paper, like facing opposite, upside down, I can see through it. I can tell whether or not I use a translator. Because if you're in Spanish 1 and you're writing in like a level 3 or beyond, like, it's not happening.
Right.
But you know, with this, like, you still need to know how to process information. And it can be useful. Like, I did a session yesterday with our good friend Brett about, you know, we covered some of that, and I'm doing a session today, and I was sad to miss Holly and Matt and Ken's session, which I know they're doing another one here as well, and I'm going to miss that too, but there's so many interesting ways to test it out. You can see, you shouldn't have asked me this question because then it'll be like the Rachelle, like, long 2-hour podcast.
You're writing the book right now.
I am.
ChatGPT will write the book.
When you look at it, I mean, you had teachers scared when cameras first came around. They were like, oh my gosh, the kids are going to take a picture of the notes and they won't copy them down. Well, why are they copying them down anyway? Because part of my thing would be like, okay, I've always thought copying notes actually teaches our kids how to plagiarize. Because you're actually teaching them how to copy word for word that's up here versus paraphrasing and taking information and understanding it and digesting it. You're like, no, literally copy what I'm telling you to copy. And then we get mad when our students can't create original thoughts because they've been copying for years and years. But Chat, I mean, it's going to be something else. I mean, now you have the AI that's actually drawing for us now. You know, you plug in what you want and it's creating images. It's like, oh, what would Morgan Freeman look like if he lived in the 18th century? And they will actually generate an image of 18th century Morgan Freeman. Like, who would want to do that? I don't know, but somebody.
I'm trying to get the voice in my head. I can't do it. There are knights around the table.
On the podcast for the Undisrupted.
We are terrible. Maybe we can find some sort of AI that'll do our voices for us, Adam. And then we can just, although, you know, the human voice is starting to get better too on some of these. I've heard, I know Apple's been out. Didn't we just see something about Apple doing are they doing it in their books now? They have it very secretly. No one, like, it wasn't a big press release.
Yeah. Because now, like, every book in the Apple books is readable using their AI. Because before you had to have Audible or it had to be a voice recorder. Because I think Audible and Amazon still are doing that. But with all the books available, you can use the screen reader feature if it's a Apple book, and it will use their speech or text to speech and read it for you. So some people are happy because they're like, hey, anybody can listen to a book. But now you also have your voice actors and people that they're like, hey, that's what we do. That's our business. So it's interesting.
I mean, I think about there's another industry that has nothing to do with education that I'm involved in somewhat loosely, and it's the tattoo industry. Don't ask why. But I have a friend who has a startup, and his startup is essentially taking digital art, and then he has a robot that can plant on your arm somewhere or wherever you want to do it, and it like can judge by the thickness of your skin. And there's like so many different micrometers of skin thickness. Every person is different. I didn't know this. And he goes, and it'll actually imprint a perfect tattoo that'll last it'll age you out. So as you age, the tattoo will grow with you. But there's people freaking out about it because it's digital. Now, the digital artists are loving it. They're like, oh, I mean, I could NFT and put this on your arm and sell it. But I mean, it's like anything else, right? It's just change, disrupted.
Yeah, we have to understand what that change looks like. So what do you think has been the biggest change just since this pandemic thing in education right now? What has been the biggest disruption that we've seen in this space?
There's a lot of disruptions, but I think one thing, and I don't know that it's so much of a disruption, but there's been so many, like the overwhelm with all the technology tools, and there's been companies that have, when schools close, it's like, hey, you can try our product for free. So then teachers were like grabbing at everything. And then now they try to get back to the teaching. And it's like, but I was doing this before, but then I found this tool, and now I have all these things added on. And then there was overwhelm, I guess, for some of the parents and family supporting students at home. That then I think part of that, it was good because that forced some teachers into trying different methods before they're like, I don't need to do that, or I don't need to use technology. But then they had to. And now I think there's a thing where it's like, okay, we've done this, we've tried this, and then schools are trying to do something more like comprehensive that works across all levels. And there's this burnout that's happened because of the tech, and that even though you might have like one condensed solution, it's like it's just another thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of disrupted, like good and bad from it. And I don't even know if that answer made sense. In my mind, it kind of made sense because it's what I'm seeing.
It sounded like it made sense when I heard it.
In one example would be like even simple things like doing a survey. Like let's say at a conference and somebody says, "Hey, do the survey and you're going to win a prize." But you sign up for something or you get a free subscription. Like even some educators are not even taking that step because it's just another thing because they're like, I have all of these other things that I can use out there. But there's a lot of good that has come from it too.
So how do you stop a teacher? Keep a teacher from being too burnt out on all the things. Like what kind of tips do you have out there? I was asked recently by a company that was like, hey, what are some ideas for teacher, keep a teacher from being burned out on tech? And I was like, I think it's somewhat mindset, but how do you get teachers in your area to be like, hey, this is why it's a good thing? What are you doing to kind of encourage them to try it? Besides just like saying, I don't have time for that.
I was going to ask you that question.
Make it fun. But
do you have the answer to this question? No, even in like presentations or just in conversations with teachers in my school, like we don't have a tech coach, and a lot of times they'll ask me for ideas and things. And I think the biggest thing is like, don't feel like you have to do all the things, first of all, because there are lots of tools out there, but there's also a lot of time in the school year. But think about your own classroom and look at something that can be used regardless of like what the topic is, that offers a lot of options within it, or, if you're working with people in your same grade level content area that you teach, see what they're using and maybe trade off ideas. So here's 4 new tools that we learned about at this conference. We want to try them all, but we don't all have time to create it. So I'm going to use this one, and then you each do one thing, and then you share it, because a lot of those tools have the functionality where you can have collaborators, you can share and let them edit it. That's one thing, but also make time in your lessons and during the day for like fun brain breaks or something, because it's good for you, it's good for the kids to focus on that balance, because you want to transform and amplify learning and use some of these tech tools and just methods even too to provide more opportunities for students, but you don't want to be like everybody head down devices all the time or feeling like you have to constantly check those things. So modeling that and getting students involved in that too, I think is one way.
So like how can technology directors, CTOs, what do you think they can do to help support that?
That is a huge question, and I had in a couple of my sessions yesterday, I had some, just people that you just mentioned, and I think having some ideas in mind where like, okay, let's pretend we're going to be in person, or we're virtual, or we're hybrid, and here's a couple methods. Now, what are those methods that you're using? And here's like 5 different tools, and just sharing it so that teachers know exactly where to go, what to use, and that it's like safe and secure for their students. That's one thing. Also being available, which is tough because they're pulled in so many different directions. I know that, and some districts have just one person that they're doing all the things, but I think also having people in the schools whether they're your schools call them different things. They're your leads, or it could be PD chairs or something, that you have people that collaborate with you that you can bounce ideas off of, or that they're the ones going out and exploring ideas to kind of like minimize it so that they can inform the tech directors and whoever else is involved in decisions and say like, here's what this tool is, here's what it does, here's the information about it, and then streamline the process a little bit too.
Yeah, I think tech leaders today, you have a lot of, just in this event alone, I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of other ideas that spread. And there's always the thing, as a tech leader, I would work with other tech directors, and they would always say, wow, we dread the conference. Right? It's like, oh, my teacher's going to come back. They're going to have all these crazy ideas, and they're going to figure out how to implement them. Well, it's really interesting because I feel like in some ways, like our tech laws or student data privacy laws, some of that stuff's become a little bit more on the forefront, so teachers are a little more attuned to it. Do you see that a lot with where you're working in? Do people care about data privacy? Is it still, because like you were saying earlier, pandemic came, grab as many free tools as we can. Are we concerned about, I feel like it's coming up, but maybe it's because I'm working only with tech directors. Do you feel like in the teacher world, there's a lot of knowledge around that, or no?
I think there's more knowledge than there was before, and I think there is a lot of concern about it, even just with, ChatGPT and the privacy and all that information, but a lot of schools, a lot of people that I talk to that want to use certain tools, but it goes through Google or anything like that. It's like, what are they doing with the information? And the privacy of students, it has become an increased focus. I know in my school, some of the tools and things that we went and we use Clever now, and we didn't have that before. And so everything needs to go to our IT guy, and he has to open that up in the system. But sometimes individual teachers just use a tool and you use it and you think, well, everybody's using this. So, and of course you trust the company because they guarantee all these things. But I think it was 2 years ago, I took a course and one of the assignments was to go to pick 5 different digital tools and to look at these different components on their website, to look at when it's been updated, their privacy and all of that compliance, and get the rating. And some of them were shocking because you think, just because everybody's using it, that, it must be okay.
Give us one. Tell us
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
You would hope that, a company would have the best interests of their intended clientele, but they're also a business. And so, I don't know, but they're, it shouldn't fall on each individual. We do have a responsibility as individual teachers to look at the tools we're bringing in, especially if we just want to try it one time to make sure that it is in compliance. But sometimes lack of time, you just figure, well, it's out there, it's good, everybody's using it, my friends are using it, so it must be okay. And then you find out, well, I didn't know they were selling the information to third parties. Well, that's not good.
Whoops.
Sorry.
We all need that. We all need to have a legal background, right?
Yeah. Is there anybody here that
anybody know a lawyer? Is there a lawyer in the house?
Is there good attorneys?
Yeah, good attorneys. Yes.
Anybody know one? Maybe one that has one hand that's not
quite
100%.
operational. We don't want to. We don't even want to ask what happened, but that's okay. We just assume it's it's Jinx. It's Jinx's. Yeah.
I was fighting zombies.
Oh, you were?
I was.
Yeah. AR.
I was.
Or VR,
R. That was the story. I came up with a different story every time somebody asked me, and the more laughs the story got, that one became the more frequent.
There you go. There you go.
Crowdsourced your injury story based on response.
After the holiday.
Who needs ChatGPT?
Got Rachelle's hand. That's the next.
Yeah, some of my students said, did it happen when you were in the Matrix? I said, if I was in the Matrix, I would have been able to dodge
the
dip
bullet.
around. Coincidentally, I did a little bit earlier here today in the
yeah,
same
exactly.
area.
We won't say where, but let's just say that Future Ready better update its liability policy.
Right?
And of all people to hit, the lawyer is who we're going to hit with the dang pole.
We need better polls behind us.
And by my people, I mean my cats. My cats will handle all of the.
That's right. You're legally represented by your cats. I love it.
Gosh almighty, if only.
Well, tell the folks out there where we can find more about you and your great work.
Well,
and there, as somebody screams in the background.
Twitter.
While we're recording, Jennifer Williams comes walking up and just trumps the whole thing, man.
Carl's fan club has arrived.
No, that's Adam's fan club.
Adam's fan club.
She didn't do that for me yesterday.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
All right, we're gonna let's rewind, shall we? So Rachelle, tell us, where can we find out more about you and where we can, and all your great work?
Right here. No.
Right here.
On Twitter and Instagram, RDENE915. I'm very consistent, so RDENE915 Gmail, and I have a blog. Just put the www.com around it. But that username goes back to the AOL.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I love it.
It's the first initial, my middle name, and my birth date. So if you want to know what my birth date is, just look at my
Steal
Twitter.
all of her passwords.
You will never figure out my password.
Ooh.
I use my computational thinking to come up with a process.
It's the name of her cats.
Yes.
It's all 7 names of the cats.
But they're all scrambled. The names are scrambled.
Yes. Cat number 1, cat number 2, number 3.
We have to know the order of the cats and the names of the cats before us to figure. But we're gonna hack this today, folks.
We've already got one GPT.
We've got one part of the password already. We know Jinx is part of it.
Oh my gosh.
They call it social
What could be
hacking.
possible passwords using these names?
But how do I spell Jinxie though? That's the thing. It might take you a little while.
I will not do that in public. This has been the Undisrupted Podcast, brought to you by All for Ed.
Disrupted.
It was disrupted just now.
Yes.
It was the Disrupted Podcast just a minute ago that may or may not make it on this recording. We are live for you from FETC. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3 on the Twitters.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are better together.
And we are better
Undisrupted.